What's up? Happy Sunday, folks. Obviously, I am not Reverend Melissa. Reverend Melissa's on vacation. She's on the West Coast visiting some friends. So I'm holding it down here on Sunday, the 10th of October. So the theme for this month is unity, and I've got a special guest for you coming up in just a few minutes. So let's go, let's set, and let's ready. Yep, I'm running all the intros today. All right, so my guest and I met at Essence Fashion House during Fashion Week, New York Fashion Week. And I don't think he knows this, but he was the only person to buy from me, aside from somebody who was on staff at the event. So he stood out to me for that reason. And then he stood out again because he interviewed me later. And typically, as a journalist myself, I know that when we interview people, we don't often buy the thing. We often try to get the thing for free in exchange for the interview. So that made an impression on me as well. And then when he interviewed me for his podcast, something he said really stood out to me. So I'm hoping we get a chance to talk about that today. So I wanted to have him on this show when I got the opportunity. And so I'm going to introduce you to a man who describes himself as a motivational warrior. Let's hear for Mr. Judah Bernard. See the drum roll, man? You see the drum roll? Welcome to the show, sir. How you doing?
Thank you. I am elated. I'm doing very well.
Good. Glad to hear it. So where in the world are you? Where geographically are you?
Geographically, I am in Washington, D.C.
Okay. So
I actually live in Washington, D.C. I know some people say I live in DMV, but I actually live in Washington, D.C.
Okay. So you traveled up to New York for Essence
New York Fashion Week, yes.
Okay. So tell us about how it was for you. How was Essence Fashion House specifically for you?
Essence Fashion House gave a new brand as far as on New York Fashion Week, being that this is their second year doing it. So I really enjoyed the atmosphere in which they encompassed for the Black and Brown community, not only just being Essence Fashion House. I think they went above and beyond, and I'm just really looking forward to the third year too as well. I always remember 3 times is a charm.
Yeah, right. I wasn't even aware of it the first year, so I'm glad that I got to be a part of it the second year as one of the designers. One of 11, folks. One of 11 designers. Very proud of that. So tell us, what does a motivational warrior mean? What's a motivational warrior do? Tell us.
Anybody that knows a warrior, number one, a warrior is someone that's going to stand in the gap when everybody else is just sleeping, everybody else is resting, everybody else is minding their business and don't have the capacity to take on more people. So I'm that warrior, and motivational in my piece is people call me for motivation. So I, as coining myself as the motivational warrior, whenever I answer the phone, because the thing is, when you're a warrior, that means you go on the front line every day. You don't have time to rest. You're the warrior. You're the one that keeps everybody to the point where they need to keep moving forward, pressing them to be better. So that's what warriors do. And I think people use the word warrior in intertwining, but my warrior is meaning that I'm standing in that gap when no one else will.
I'm glad you started and ended on that. That is something that Reverend Melissa says all the time. So the synchronicity is perfect. She always talks about standing in the gap and standing in the gap for people through prayer and through her belief.
Yes.
And believing something greater for them than they believe for themselves.
Yes, always. I tell people before they know it, you're great.
Right.
Now, don't tell everybody that, because everybody can be great. But then again, if it's not there at that particular time, I just can't say it.
Yeah, you got to reach for it. You don't get it automatically.
No, you don't get it automatically.
Yeah, it's simple, but it ain't easy. You got to work for it.
Exactly. Everybody can be great, but then again, some people have already possessed that greatness and don't know it. So let me repurpose what I said to make sure that everyone understands. You can be great, but then again, some people have achieved it and don't have the necessary knowledge they've already achieved it.
Right. Greatness is in all of us.
Yes.
It's up to us and find it and unleash it.
Yes.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen. And great for you for standing in the gap. And shout out to Reverend Melissa for standing in the gap also, because that's what she loves to do. So tell us about the name, The Rise Creating Your Voice, how that come about, and what is it exactly for the people that don't know?
The Rise Creating Your Voice is basically a platform. And it's a multi-level of platforms where we provide many forms of communication and also education about many various subjects that we've talked about: breast cancer, we talked about domestic violence, we talked about scar victims. Everyone has a platform on this. What we don't do is provide that platform where people want to gain the fame. It's more of telling the story. Being able to tell your testimony or your story or your tagline to be able to, for people that can't get on an original show or still holding on to that story, gives a broader perspective of coming on to The Rise Creating Your Voice and creating your voice, because most people hide their voices and hide those scars, hide those traumas. And it don't necessarily have to be a trauma. It could be any testimony about being great. So I think at the end of the day, it's providing that platform for people to come on and say, yes, I believe. It's testifying on the internet.
Okay. And is it a podcast?
It is a podcast.
Okay, so it's available on all the podcasting platforms?
Yes. I'm actually on Podbean. I'm on Facebook just picked me up, and now I dropped my things into Facebook. So thank God for that. I was like, come on, Facebook. Not saying I'm trying to put anything out there, but now I can put so I do it in video and audio, because I know some people just like to listen to the audio, but I'm a very, what they call charismatic person. So I like for you to see me be charismatic.
That's right. That's right. Get all the vibes.
I want all the vibes coming through. So you see the hands moving, you'll probably see me like at my worst sometimes. But I think that's what people need to see, because what we don't realize that even I suffer different things too as well. And you will see that in the voice changes and things like that too as well. But then again, is I'm still able to produce and show you who I really am. I'm not hiding behind a producer. I'm not hiding behind a script. I'm giving you raw material and things just up front. Most of the people that I interview, it's not a script. I'm giving you questions, let's go. Some people are uncomfortable with that. Those that are uncomfortable, I provide a script or some things that I might ask them. But other than that, I like raw and unadulterated, and just be ready, because the thing is, I think vulnerability needs to be key in the society we live in right now.
Yeah. So you're letting it flow through you. That's amazing.
Yes.
And you use the word testimony several times. So that's a great segue. One of the regular questions for this show is, tell me about your Won't He Do It story. So I know you got a Won't He Do It. Let's get it.
My Won't He Do It story is, I'm here today. Won't He Do It? August 2020, my manifestation for the Rise Creating Your Voice was a Won't He Do It, because basically that's something that I manifested in my little black book that I've had for years. And it's in here. And I did that about 3 years ago, and it was called The Rise. Even my logo, he had me write the name of the person on there. And that's in that book. And I don't have any relatives named Kelvin. And my logo person was named Kelvin.
Wow.
So it's the Won't He Do It is, I continue to see that, because he continually does it for me. And he continues to, the things that I manifest is that he keeps on giving it whatever I need, because he said he will give me the desires of my heart, and he knows what my heart is. And the thing is, you have to have a clean heart in order for him to allow him to do it. If you continue to manifest or still want to deal in different behaviors and different mad situations and just being angry all the time, he can't work in that type of temple. So my thing is, motivational warrior, being humble, and being a servant of God. And if anybody been on my Facebook, my first thing is God's humble servant. Many people want to call me a minister or a preacher and things like that. I think what we still have to understand that we all can minister, but then again, being God's humble servant is the number one thing because we're here only to serve Him.
Right. What you're saying reminds me of a phrase that I heard from a pastor in Nashville. She called it moving in the rhythm of God's grace. And that's what you appear to be doing, moving in the rhythm of God's grace, letting it flow through you.
Yes.
Doing the work. So when you interviewed me, we touched on something that I wanted to ask you about again. So you said that you spent some period being unhoused. And so tell us about that and what brought you out of that and how you overcame it.
I think me being unhoused was, at many times we get, what's the word I want to use? A little misbehaving, and our parents, for lack of words, would say, hey, if you can't abide by my rules, get out. And that's the period that I became unhoused. And the motivation for me getting out of being unhoused was I knew my worth. But then again, sometimes we go through trials and periods for learning experiences.
Amen.
And that trial period for me is, as being unhoused was, I know I had to keep doing my work and getting better for me because I still had to understand what that misbehaving actuality was and what was my accountability and my responsibility for me getting put out of the house. And I do hold accountability for that. But then again, I still have to understand that people have rules. But then again, I still look at it as everybody has accountability. So I've talked to the person that unhoused that brought me to that situation, and I really expressed how I felt. And then, at the end of the day, we still have to understand that we all learn and behave differently. And one thing that I told them is, number one, no matter how I act or how I misbehave, your job was to support and guide me. You got one job and one job only, and that's to support and guide me, regardless of how I did or what I did. But then again, we still have to look at my accountability because I could have done something right. But then again, there was other things that were going on with me too as well, in which everything is fine now because number one is I adapted to that unhoused situation. But then again, in my adaptation, I know I had to get out of it to make sure that I made a home for myself. And home is not always in a building. It's about building in that temple because sometimes people are unhoused spiritually.
Yeah.
Some people are unhoused mentally. Some people are unhoused physically.
Right.
So you in a building does not necessarily dictate that you're housed. Sometimes you can be unhoused and a lot of other things come into that unhoused situation and you don't know how to build that foundation. So in that, I learned how to build the foundation for me to be housed, but not only housed, be housed spiritually, physically, and mentally.
Right. Yeah, you learned that lesson early on. You learn to look in the mirror and find your fingerprint on the situation, which is something a lot of people never learn to do.
Yes.
Find your piece of whatever it is that's going on. That's very important.
And that's the thing is, at the end of the day, one thing is people's got to stop playing victim. We have to stop playing victim and take accountability, responsibility for self. Because you continue to play victim, you'll never be a victor. And the thing is, you might have small wins, but to have victory is something totally different.
Right. Right. No, that's very important. That's very important because this society teaches us to blame. It's so much easier to blame and point the finger at other people, other situations, being the reason that we can't, be the reason that we're stuck. And taking responsibility and looking for our piece of it, that's the hard work.
Yes, that's hard work. And it's a process too.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we don't realize just how much we take part in having accountability and responsibility for what happened. And when you're in a learned behavior process that keeps repeating itself in what I call a generational cycle, then sometimes you don't realize because it's so prevalent all the time. So it just becomes a habit or a learned behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything is basically a habit. Like, it all boils down to habits. You got to convert your bad habits into good habits, and that's how you progress.
Always.
I feel like we could spend the whole show talking about this right here. So let me get to these joy questions. But before I do that, I work, as you know, with the unhoused, and I feel like they could be inspired by your journey. So anything you could share about how to move from unhoused to not being unhoused would be greatly appreciated.
I think for me, because I've worked in unhoused situations and shelters, I hate to call them shelters, I call them buildings. Because what is a shelter? A shelter can be just a tent. So I think we have to look at the encampments, we have to look at everything. But I want people to understand that to be unhoused, you have to be unhoused spiritually, mentally, and physically. And if you're not prepared to be unhoused, then you will still be unhoused physically in that spectrum. One thing is to really develop a plan.
A plan.
Mm-hmm. Develop a plan. And sometimes that takes a team. So you have to know who your support team is. And I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of unhoused people in DC. And specifically, they tell me, I want to be unhoused.
Wow.
Because reality for them is now I got to go back into the system. So now I look at it from a systemic point, is the mentality of them that got out of Vietnam and nowhere else to go. Them that came back from war, they have nowhere else to go. That's all they know. So then again, are they really unhoused?
That's interesting.
So I think from a systemic piece, we have to look at the real battles that we face in life is that from a systemic piece, have these people been unhoused because of the system? Then again, on the top of that is maybe they're not unhoused or they don't feel like they unhoused.
Yeah.
They said they're free. It's freedom for them.
Right. We had a woman on the show who actually lives in Baltimore. She was on the show a couple of weeks ago. And she said that one of her neighbors became unhoused. And she ran into him recently, and he said that he had just won the lotto. And so she was saying, oh, so you're going to get an apartment down now? And he was like, nah, I'm good. God's got me. I was like, wow.
That's freedom.
Communication can be a choice. It can be freedom, as you say.
Yes, it's freedom because guess what? I'm not tied down to a system.
Right.
I'm able to go as I please. If I choose to spend $30 for a hotel or whatever, guess what? That's still their choice.
Right.
So I think we need to look at the mentality and the whole structure of what's unhoused. And then we got couch surfing and things like that. They have a lot of
levels.
There's a lot of levels. A lot of levels of that.
For
so
sure.
then we have to look at freedom.
Yeah.
And what a person's mindset is about freedom. And most of them saying it's not tied down to a system or a subsystem.
Right.
So,
and also we have to divorce ourselves from our own assumptions about
yes,
what the situation is, because that's what I'm learning. I've been donating to 8 different nonprofits that work with the unhoused, and every time I talk to one of the founders or I hear them speak, I get a different perspective about that space. And here again is another perspective. I appreciate it. So again, let me jump into these joy questions before we just talking about this. So the 3 standard questions for the show are, here's number 1. What does joy look or feel like for you?
Joy looks like to me if you saw joy in a dictionary, you probably see the picture of me, because basically, I'm not only joy, I feel it, and the feeling that I have is peace, autonomy with myself. But then again, knowing that I'm doing the will of God, that's joy. And then the thing is, joy is centered. Joy is not all over the place. So joy is centered for me. Knowing that I have that joy, and it's just joy, knowing other joys can come, but it's being centered, that one joy.
Yeah, that joy can beget other joys.
Yes.
All right. So Reverend Mel says that she is living life in joy. What do you say that you're living life in?
I'm living life in peace. I have, God has allowed me, let me say that first and foremost, that he has allowed me to live in peace because I accepted and surrendered to his will. And that was a peace that I had to get. And it was a process because I had to remove old me.
Right.
So in that, I find myself just, I'm like free. It's freedom for me and free will because basically I'm able to access so much more since I surrendered and am doing his will.
I feel that. Okay. And the last joy question, what is your joy song and why?
My joy song is it's by Reverend Milton Bronson and the Thompson Community Singers. And I just had it. He cares for you. I always tear up from that because we have our family reunion almost every year. And I have the late Dr. Phoebe Slaughter Lanier. She used to sing and she had a very high soprano voice and she can hit all those notes. So when I hear that, because whatever we're going through, and I think people have to understand whatever, whoever, whatever, somebody ever, whatever you're going through, he cares for you. And if we continue to realize that and keep our minds stayed on him, knowing that whatever we're going through, that he's going to care for us. We're fine. So that's the joy that I get, that as long as I keep my mind stayed on him, he will keep me in perfect peace. And that's about my mind.
Right.
He said nothing else. He said your mind. So if your thought process is on him daily, you have perfect peace.
Right. And is that the song you listen to every day to get you grounded, or is that?
Oh yes, yes,
yes. Daily. That's a daily affirmation.
That's a daily affirmation, and just knowing that my scripture is in everything give thanks. This is the will of God concerning you. So even in my bad days, thank you.
Right.
Because you know what, you're gonna make me feel better in about 3 hours, 2 hours, whatever your will is. I'm ready. So you allow me to get up and let me know when I need to get ready to do what I need to do.
Yeah. And also, this too shall pass.
Yes, right? Yes. And I have a hat that says that.
There you go. There you go. In sync.
Exactly.
Thinking it all up.
I am a walking billboard. I wear a lot of lettering shirts and lettering hats because I think people need to know that generally I don't want to speak to people. So most people read my shirts. One of my shirts says free hugs.
There you go.
How awesome is that? And I have people reaching out like, hey, you want to but I accept the offer, but it gives smiles on people's faces. And that's what we should be. We should be radiating energy and radiating peace for people. And I think people actually feel good after they say that. I've had guys come up and hug me like, yo, I just need it,
Right.
You have to be honest with yourself to be just in a right space. And I'm glad that I'm able to radiate that energy because I don't know many people that will just come up and hug people now.
Right.
But when I wear my free hug shirt, I get hugs all day long.
There you go. There you go. Changing the vibration out there.
Yes.
So speaking of radiating energy, so the bracelet you got from me, you gave it a very interesting name, and I don't know why. So tell us about the name, what the name is for the people that don't know, and why.
The name of the bracelet is Wisdom's Key.
Which is dope.
And the thing is, under my surrendering and in my doing God's will, he coined me the wisdom dialogue, which I came to say the dialogue coach. But he has given me so much wisdom. And I'm thankful for that. And when I wear it, it's just the energy that exerts in the wrist. I don't have it on now because I just came from the barbershop. I'm just letting you know. But in that, it shows, because the tiger eye, and then, the eye of the tiger, that means you're always ready to fight. You're always ready to be that warrior. Yeah. And then that purple is royal, the majestic, and it reminded me of wisdom. And if you know steel holds tightly than any other thing in it, and it grabs. Then you have the thing that you put on where you can screw it over. Yeah. So there's so many elements in that where I see that it encompasses wisdom's key. And in order for you to know something, you don't have to always have a problem, but provide solutions.
Right.
And that part is wisdom's key, which it gives me the key not only to wisdom, but it radiates that energy into my whole body when I wear a Sekou Rights bracelet.
That's dope. I appreciate that. And of course, you're not wearing it, and I didn't think to pull up a picture. So folks, go over to my Instagram.
Did you want to go get it right quick?
Yeah, folks, go over to my Instagram. It's posted. It's called Sekou Rights Collection on Instagram. Check it out. That was a great story. You can't not see what it looks like now after that story.
Yes. It is beautiful. Had I remembered, it's like sitting right there. So
this is all good.
Yeah.
So the time went really fast. I really appreciate you being here. I'm glad that we got to connect again. I'm glad you got to inspire people. I'm glad you got to tell people about wisdom's key. So shout out to Reverend Melissa. She'll be back next week, Sunday. Today, Sunday, she has a guest speaker at her church, Rockland County CSL. So tune into that at rocklandcsl.org. And you can check me out on my show, the Be Your Own Hero Show, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, right here where you're watching this. So shout out to you, Judah Bernard. Thanks for being here. And everybody check out your stuff. Tell them where to find you.
That's www.therise.live. That is my website. Also, I am on Facebook at Judah Bernard 35 and on Instagram at The Rise Creating Your Voice, and also on Twitter. So you might want to go to Twitter and Instagram. You want to like me because Facebook is kind of like stressed out. But then again, some of my podcasts, I have pages too as well. The Rise Creating Your Voice and The Rise too as well. And then I have a group on Facebook called Check In and Check Up, meaning that people need to check in every so now and again, being that we're in this pandemic. Everybody is not available, but then it gives an avenue to say, hey, how you doing? Without calling. So.
Right. You got a bunch of places where people can engage.
That's right.
So what's the most direct way to get to your podcast?
The most direct way is Apple Music.
Okay.
All thing you have to do is The Rise Creating Your Voice. iHeartRadio. I have so many platforms. It's just like you can Google it and just put The Rise Creating Your Voice, or you can Google Judah Bernard. The whole page is about me.
There you go.
You will just pull it up. The whole page is about me.
Okay, folks. So Google Judah Bernard or The Rise Creating Your Voice. Follow all the things. Check it out. Look for our interview because we did an interview a couple weeks ago. So
yes.
Check out
it's on Facebook and also on Instagram too as well.
Great. So thanks for being here again, Judah. I appreciate you.
No, thank you.
Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next week. Later. Bye.